Three blonde girls approached his table at the restaurant. Trembling with fear, they whispered, "Please pretend you're our daddy." Leonardo didn't know that this request would save 5 lives and change everything forever. His cup halted mid-air. Leonardo Ferreira was bringing the espresso to his lips when 3 small figures approached his table at the Douro Palace, the city's most elegant restaurant. 3 identical girls, with golden hair shimmering under the chandelier lights, but with eyes that carried a soul-piercing fear. The tallest of the triplets, who couldn't have been more than 6 years old, leaned in and whispered in a voice that trembled like a leaf in the wind, "Please, sir, pretend you're our daddy." Leonardo felt the world stop. The restaurant's bustle continued around him. Waiters served refined dishes. Businessmen discussed deals at nearby tables. But at that moment, there were only those 3 pairs of blue eyes pleading for salvation. He gently placed the cup on the saucer, which clinked softly against the porcelain, and looked at the triplets with an intensity he hadn't felt in years. "What do you mean, girls?" The question came out low, but charged with an urgency he himself didn't understand. The second triplet, with the same angelic face as her sisters, discreetly pointed to a table in the corner of the room. There, a woman in a blood-red dress watched everything with tears streaming down her face, holding a white napkin that looked like a flag of surrender. "Our mommy is very sad, and we don't know what to do. She said, today is the last day we'll have afternoon tea in a nice place like this." The third triplet completed with devastating innocence. "We just wanted to feel what it's like to have a real daddy, just for today." Leonardo felt something explode in his chest. A sharp, visceral pain that wasn't his, but took over his entire body as if it were his own. These children weren't playing. There was real despair in their tiny voices. An urgency that 6-year-olds shouldn't know. Without thinking twice, he pushed his chair back and knelt on the restaurant floor, getting to the triplets' height. "Come here, my princesses. You're late for our special treat." The entire restaurant stopped. Conversations were interrupted mid-sentence. Waiters froze with trays in hand. Even the background music seemed to dim. 50 people watched the scene, not understanding what was happening, but sensing that something profoundly important was unfolding before their eyes. The 3 triplets threw themselves into Leonardo's arms as if it were the most natural thing in the world, and he embraced them with an intensity that surprised even himself. "Daddy, we were looking for you," the first girl said, and the word daddy came out with a naturalness that made Leonardo's heart race. My goodness, what a beautiful scene. A lady at the next table whispered, bringing a hand to her chest. "That man must love his daughters very much." Other customers began to comment softly. Some took discreet photos of the touching scene, and Leonardo realized he had become the center of attention unintentionally, but he didn't care. At that moment, only those 3 children who trembled in his arms like frightened birds mattered. The woman in the red dress rose from her table with slow movements, as if each step physically hurt. She walked between the tables with the elegance of someone born for that environment, but with such deep sadness in her eyes that it made people lower their gaze when she passed. When she reached Leonardo's table, she stopped and took a deep breath, as if gathering courage to speak. "Excuse the bother, sir. Are my daughters disturbing you?" Leonardo slowly stood up, without letting go of the girl's hands. He looked into the woman's eyes and saw a pain so intense it hit him physically. It wasn't ordinary sadness. It was pure despair. The kind of suffering that breaks people from the inside. They're not bothering anyone at all. "We're having a very important conversation, aren't we, girls?" The 3 nodded in unison, clinging to his legs like small anchors in a storm. "I'm Camila," the woman said, extending a visibly trembling hand. "Their mother, Sofia, Helena, and Isabella." She pointed to each triplet as she spoke their names, and Leonardo noticed her voice faltered with each word. "They normally don't approach strangers like this. I don't know what got into them today." A lie. Leonardo instantly realized she knew exactly why her daughters had approached him, and that the lie cost her dearly to tell. "Mommy, the mister is very nice, Sofia, the first to speak," said, tugging at her mother's dress hem. "He said we can stay here with him today." And Helena added, "He looks like a good daddy." Isabella, the youngest of the triplets, concluded with a devastating innocence that made half the restaurant swallow tears. "He even smells like a real daddy." The silence that fell over the restaurant was deafening. Waiters stopped moving. Conversations died mid-sentence, and even the sound of cutlery touching plates ceased completely. Camila closed her eyes, and a single tear rolled down her right cheek, followed by another and another, until she was crying silently in front of 50 strangers without caring about the exposure. Leonardo felt his stomach churn. These children knew the smell of a father. It meant they had had a father before and now they didn't. It meant loss, absence, an emptiness that 3 6-year-old triplets shouldn't carry. He looked at Camila with a new intensity, trying to decipher the story behind all that pain. The girls can stay here with me a little longer. It seems we have a lot to talk about. Please, Mommy, Sophia pleaded. We promise we'll behave. We just want… She paused mid-sentence, looking at her sisters as if sharing a secret. Helena continued, We just want to play family today. And Isabella finished with devastating simplicity. Just today, Mommy. Tomorrow we'll go back to being just the 4 of us. Isabella's sentence echoed through the restaurant like a silent scream. Just the 4 of us. Not 5. 4. Mother and 3 daughters. No father in the equation. Leonardo looked at Camila and saw that she had paled upon hearing her youngest daughter's words. There was something in that sentence that cut deep. Some truth that hurt too much to be said aloud. Of course, they can stay, Leonardo said, his voice hoarser than usual. In fact, I was feeling very lonely here. You arrived at just the right time. He signaled to the waiter, who approached immediately. 3 extra chairs at my table, please. And the dessert menu for my princesses here. The waiter, a man in his 40s who had worked at the Doro Palace for decades, looked at the scene with an emotional smile. Of course, Mr. Ferreira, what a beautiful family you have. Family? The word hung in the air like a promise or a lie. Leonardo wasn't sure which. Camila looked at him with an indecipherable expression, as if seeing something in him she didn't expect to find. The 3 triplets screamed with joy upon hearing they were staying and began jumping around the table like little enchanted fairies. While waiting for the chairs to arrive, Leonardo knelt again to be at the girl's height. Tell me something, princesses. Why did you say today is the last day you'll have afternoon tea in a nice place? The question came out low, but charged with an urgency that made Camila take a step back. The 3 triplets exchanged glances, that silent communication only multiples share. And Sophia took the lead. Because Mommy said after today everything will be different, she replied, with a seriousness that didn't match her age. She cried a lot yesterday and said, we need to be very brave, Helena added, and that we'll have to be strong because she won't be able to take care of us for long. Isabella finished with an innocence that broke Leonardo's heart. That's why we wanted to have a daddy today, to remember how nice it is to have a complete family. The entire restaurant heard. There was no way not to hear, because the silence was so complete that the triplets' words echoed like confessions in an empty church. Leonardo felt something die within him, and something new be born at the same second. He looked at Camila and saw that she was unraveling, literally falling apart in front of everyone, as if her daughter's words had pulled the last thread holding her together. Camila, he said, standing up and extending his hand to her. Please, sit with us. It wasn't a request, it was almost a plea. She hesitated for a moment, looking around the restaurant, seeing all those people watching, judging, speculating. But then she looked at her daughters, who watched her with such pure hope in their eyes that it was impossible to deny them anything. Just today, she whispered, more to herself than to him. Just today, they can play at having a complete family. And she sat at the table, completing a picture that seemed to have been painted by an artist who understood pain transformed into beauty. Leonardo didn't know yet, but Camila's just today was about to become the most beautiful lie she had ever told in her life. Because when the truth finally came out, when he discovered what was really happening to that family, just today would become forever, in a way none of them could imagine. The chairs arrived, the triplets sat like princesses at a royal banquet, and Leonardo ordered the best the dessert menu had to offer. But as the waiter took the orders, he couldn't take his eyes off Camila. There was something about her, something familiar that he couldn't quite identify, as if he had seen that face before, in another place, at another time. And then, when she smiled at her daughters for the first time that afternoon, Leonardo felt the world stop once more, because that smile, even broken by sadness, was exactly like the smile of someone he knew very well, someone who had disappeared from his life years ago, leaving a hole that had never been filled. The first chapter of the most important story of his life had just begun, and Leonardo Ferreira still had no idea that those 3 triplets, whispering, "Please pretend you're our daddy," had just saved him too. But there was something else. As the girls chose desserts from the menu, animatedly pointing to pictures of cakes and ice cream, Leonardo caught fragments of a conversation at the next table. What a strange situation. A woman alone with 3 children. He doesn't seem to know them. The whispers were low, but audible enough to make Leonardo realize that the situation was far from normal. Camila also heard. Her shoulders stiffened, and she lowered her head even further, as if she wanted to disappear. It was then that Leonardo made the decision that would change everything. He rose from his chair, walked to the next table with firm steps, and said loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear, "Excuse me, but you are disturbing my family with these comments." The entire restaurant turned to look. The three triplets stopped leafing through the menu and looked at Leonardo with an adoration he had never felt before. Camila looked up, surprised, and for the first time that afternoon, there were no tears in her eyes. There was something different. Hope. And it was at that exact moment, with 50 people watching, three triplets smiling as if they had won the lottery, and a woman in a red dress finally taking a deep breath, that Leonardo Ferreira understood a simple but devastating truth. Sometimes, pretending to be someone you're not can be the first step to becoming who you truly should be. The silence that fell over the restaurant after Leonardo's declaration lasted only a few seconds, but it seemed like an eternity. The three triplets looked at him as if they had just witnessed a miracle, and Camila gripped the napkin so tightly that her knuckles turned white. It was Sofia who broke the magical moment, standing up from her chair and running to hug Leonardo's leg. "Thank you for defending us, Daddy." The word echoed through the Doro Palace like a silent thunderclap. Daddy, spoken with such naturalness, with such conviction, that even Leonardo felt a shiver run down his spine. Helena and Isabella didn't delay in joining their sister, and in a matter of seconds, he was surrounded by the three girls, who hugged him as if he were the most precious thing in the world. Leonardo looked over their golden heads and saw Camila watching the scene with an expression that mixed gratitude, sadness, and something he couldn't quite decipher. It was as if she were watching something she had always dreamed of seeing, but knew couldn't last. "Girls," she said softly, "come back to the table. Uncle Leonardo will think you're too clingy." "He's not uncle," Isabella interrupted with the fierce determination only 6-year-old children can have. "He's our daddy." "He himself said we're his family." Helena nodded in agreement. "And he defended us like a real daddy does." Sofia completed the trio. "Mummy, he has the right smell. The right smell." The phrase hit Leonardo like a punch to the stomach. What kind of life had these girls had to be able to identify the smell of a father? And more importantly, what kind of loss had they suffered to need that sense of protection so much? Camila abruptly stood up from her chair, her eyes filling with tears again. "Excuse me," she murmured. "I need to go to the restroom," and quickly walked between the tables, leaving Leonardo alone with three triplets who looked at him as if he were the answer to all the prayers they had made. "She always gets sad when we talk about Daddy," Sofia said softly, climbing into the chair next to Leonardo. "We can't talk about our real daddy because she starts crying a lot." Helena sat on the other side. "He went to heaven when we were little." Isabella completed with a devastating wisdom for a 6-year-old. "Mommy said he went to take care of the stars, but we know he just didn't want to stay with us." Leonardo felt his heart break. These children carried a guilt that wasn't theirs, a pain they couldn't fully process. He leaned forward, getting to their eye level. "Listen closely to what I'm going to tell you, princesses. When a daddy goes to take care of the stars, it's not because he doesn't want to be with his daughters. It's because sometimes heaven needs special people to do important jobs up there." "But why did it have to be our daddy?" Sofia asked. And there was an anguish in her voice that cut to the soul. "We were too little to be without him." Leonardo swallowed hard, trying to find words that could comfort such deep pain. "Sometimes things don't make sense to us, but they make sense up there." "Do you know what I think?" The three nodded, completely focused on his words. "I think your daddy is taking care of the stars so he can light your way here on Earth. And I think he sent you to my table today because he knew I also needed a family." The revelation came out without Leonardo planning it. But the moment the words left his mouth, he realized they were completely true. For years, he had lived alone in his luxury penthouse, surrounded by staff and employees, but with no one to share truly important moments with. No one to wait for him to come home. No one to care if he had eaten properly, or if he was working too much. "You don't have family either?" Helena asked, with the innocent curiosity of children. Leonardo shook his head. "I don't have children. I don't have a wife. I just have a big company and a big house, but no one to share all of it with." Isabella frowned her forehead. "So you're like Mommy." "She's also alone since Daddy went to take care of the stars." It was at that moment that Leonardo began to piece together the puzzle. Camila wasn't just a struggling single mother. There was something deeper, more urgent about her situation. The girl's words about today being the last day and Mommy won't be able to take care of us for long took on a new, darker weight. When Camila returned from the restroom, Leonardo noticed she had tried to hide the signs of crying, but her red eyes gave her away. She sat down slowly, as if each movement hurt, and forced a smile for her daughters. Sorry for the delay. Are you behaving, my loves? Mummy, Uncle Leonardo said Daddy is taking care of the stars to light our way. Sophia excitedly recounted. And that he sent us here because he also needs a family. Camila looked at Leonardo with an indefinable expression, as if seeing something in him she didn't expect to find. Is that true? She asked softly, and there was a vulnerability in her voice that made Leonardo want to protect her as much as he wanted to protect the girls. It's been a long time since I've felt as complete as I do now with you four here. The desserts arrived at that moment, interrupting the emotionally charged conversation. The triplets screamed with joy at the sight of the decorated cakes and colorful ice creams, and for a few minutes, the table was filled with laughter and animated conversation. Leonardo watched Camila interact with her daughters and noticed something that alarmed him. She was memorizing every moment, as if she were saying goodbye. Camila, he said when the girls were distracted with the desserts. May I ask you something? She nodded, but didn't lift her eyes from her plate. When the girls say today is the last day for certain things, what exactly are they talking about? The question hit Camila like a shot. She stopped stirring her coffee. Her hands began to tremble, and for a moment, Leonardo thought she would faint right there. When she finally looked up, he saw a pain so profound that he had to restrain himself from getting up and hugging her. They don't know yet, she whispered, her voice almost inaudible. They don't know that tomorrow. She paused, looked at her daughters who were laughing and eating cake, and a single tear rolled down her cheek. Tomorrow I'm going to have to make the most difficult decision of my life. Leonardo felt his blood run cold. What decision? Camila took a deep breath, as if gathering courage to say something that was killing her inside. I have a serious medical condition. The doctor said, I don't have much time, and I don't have family. I don't have anyone who can take care of the girls when She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Leonardo understood everything in a moment of devastating clarity. Camila was dying, and the triplets would be orphaned, without a father, without a mother, without family, completely alone in the world. That's why I brought them here today, she continued, her voice choked. I wanted them to have one last special afternoon to remember what it's like to be happy before everything changes forever. She looked at Leonardo with a despair that cut to the soul. Tomorrow I'm going to have to take them to children's services. It's the only option I have. The revelation exploded in Leonardo's head like a bomb. Those three angelic children who had approached him, asking him to pretend to be their father, were just hours away from being handed over to the system. They would be separated, placed in different families, or, worse yet, they would grow up in institutions without ever knowing the love of a real family. No, he said, the word coming out with a force that surprised even himself. Camila looked at him confused. What do you mean, no? Leonardo leaned forward, his eyes shining with fierce determination. I won't let that happen. I won't let them go to any institution. Leonardo, you don't understand, Camila began. But he interrupted her. I understand perfectly. You're sick, you don't have family, and you're desperate. But I have a proposal that can change everything. He paused, looked at the three triplets, who continued eating cake oblivious to the conversation that was defining their future, and made the most important decision of his life. Marry me. The two words hung in the air like a forbidden confession. Marry me. Leonardo had said it with such naturalness that even he was surprised by his own courage. Camila stopped breathing. The coffee spoon froze midway to her mouth, and the three triplets continued eating cake as if the world hadn't just been turned upside down at the table next to them. You, what? Camila whispered, and her voice was so low that Leonardo had to lean forward to hear. He reached his hand across the table and held her trembling fingers, feeling how cold they were despite the warmth of the restaurant. Marry me today, now, before it's too late. Leonardo, are you crazy? She tried to pull her hand away, but he held it more firmly. Not possessively, but protectively. You don't know me. You don't know the girls. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. Her voice was getting louder, and Sophia looked up from her cake plate, frowning as she realized Mommy was getting nervous again. Mommy is fighting with Uncle Leonardo? Helena asked. And there was an anxiety in her voice that broke the hearts of both adults at the table. Isabella dropped her spoon and turned completely in her chair. Is he going to leave like the other uncle who came here once? The innocent question revealed that this wasn't the first man Camila had tried to introduce to her daughters. And by Isabella's tone, previous experiences hadn't ended well. I'm not leaving, Leonardo said, looking directly at the three girls. Never. You can write that down. He turned to Camila again, and there was a determination in his eyes that she had never seen in anyone before. You said tomorrow you'll have to take them to an institution. You said you have no family, no options. I'm offering an option. An insane option, Camila retorted, but her voice lacked conviction. You can't just decide to marry a stranger because you feel sorry for her daughters. Marriage doesn't work that way. Family isn't built that way. She stopped, looked at the triplets who were watching the conversation with full attention, and lowered her voice again. And besides, I'm dying. Do you understand that? In a few months, maybe a year, you'll be a widower with 3 small children. The word widower echoed between them like a dark premonition. Leonardo hadn't thought of it that way. He hadn't considered that he was offering not only to be an instant father but also to go through the grief of losing a wife. But when he looked at Sofia, trying to hide that she was listening to the conversation, at Helena, nervously biting her lip, and at Isabella, who had completely stopped eating and was just watching, he knew he had no choice. Then so be it, he said, and the firmness in his voice made even the waiters stop moving. If I become a widower, I'll become a widower with 3 daughters who love me and whom I already love as if they were my own. If you die in a few months, at least these girls will have a real father taking care of them. They won't grow up in institutions wondering why no one wanted them. Camila closed her eyes, and 2 thick tears rolled down her cheeks. You don't understand what you're saying. You know nothing about me. You might discover things you won't like. Leonardo released one of her hands and caressed her tear-streaked face. Then tell me everything now so I can decide with all the information. The triplets had completely given up pretending they weren't listening. They were sitting in their chairs like 3 small judges, waiting for the verdict that would decide their future. Sofia was the first to speak. Mommy, Uncle Leonardo is different from the others? He didn't leave when we started crying. Helena agreed, and he defended us from those rude gentlemen. Isabella closed the argument with the devastating wisdom of children. And he has the right smell, Mommy. You always say we recognize good people by their smell, the right smell. Leonardo still didn't fully understand what that meant to the girls, but he perceived it was something deep, almost instinctive. Camila also perceived the weight of her youngest daughter's words because she sighed deeply and straightened in her chair as if preparing for a confession. All right, she said, her voice coming out firmer for the first time all afternoon. You want to know everything? I'll tell you everything. She looked around the restaurant, saw that several people were still discreetly watching them, and lowered her voice. My full name is Camila Santos Ferreira. I worked as an accountant at Ferreira Holdings 7 years ago. The world stopped. Leonardo felt as if he had been punched in the stomach, followed by a kick to the chest. Ferreira Holdings was the name of his company. Camila Santos Ferreira had worked for him. And more than that, he remembered her now. He remembered her face, her smile, the way she always greeted everyone in the hallway. He remembered how she had suddenly disappeared without explanation. You, he began, but the words died in his throat. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in his mind with painful clarity. Camila Santos, the brilliant accountant who had been fired for theft, who had been accused of embezzling money from the company, who had been escorted out of the building in front of all her colleagues, like a common criminal. You remember now? She said. And it wasn't a question, it was a bitter realization. You remember how you treated me on the last day I worked for you? You remember how you believed the accusations without even giving me a chance to defend myself? Her voice was filled with old, wounded resentment that had never fully healed. Leonardo remembered. He remembered calling Camila into his office, putting the papers on the table, telling her she was fired for cause. He remembered her face, the surprise, the desperate attempt to explain, and he remembered how he had refused to listen, how he had called security to escort her out. Camila, He tried to speak, but she raised her hand for silence. Let me finish. You want to know everything? Then you'll know everything. She took a deep breath, looked at her daughters who were watching with full attention, and continued. I was pregnant when you fired me, 4 months pregnant with the triplets. I had just found out they were 3. I was radiant, planning to tell my husband that night. Leonardo's heart pounded. Camila had been fired while pregnant with triplets. And he had done it without even knowing, without even giving her a chance to explain the situation. My husband was a truck driver, she continued. He was traveling when it all happened. When he came home and found out I had been fired for theft, that my name was being investigated by the police, he couldn't handle the pressure. What happened to him? Leonardo asked, though he already suspected the answer from her tone of voice. Camila looked at her daughters, who had fallen silent, as if they knew the most painful part of the story was coming. He died in a road accident 2 weeks later. The police said it was fatigue, that he fell asleep at the wheel, but I know it was despair. He couldn't cope with the shame of having a wife accused of being a thief. The silence that fell over the table was so heavy that Leonardo found it difficult to breathe. Camila had lost her job, her husband, and had given birth to triplets alone, carrying the weight of a theft accusation. "You didn't steal anything," he said, and it wasn't a question. It was a certainty that came like a devastating revelation. "Never stole anything. Never," she confirmed. And for the first time, there was a strength in her voice that hadn't been there before. "It was Maurice Albright who embezzled the money and planted the evidence on my desk. I found out a few months later when a former employee contacted me and confessed that he had seen Maurice messing with my computer after hours." Maurice Albright. The name exploded in Leonardo's head like a bomb. His trusted partner, the man who had brought the evidence against Camila, who had pressured for her immediate dismissal without investigation, the man who had become even closer to him after Camila left, who had taken on more responsibilities in the company. "Do you have proof?" Leonardo asked, his voice hoarse. "Can you prove it was him?" Camila pulled a crumpled folder from her bag, a folder Leonardo hadn't noticed before. "I have documents, testimonies, even recordings. I spent years gathering evidence, years trying to clear my name." She placed the folder on the table carefully, as if it were a bomb about to explode. "But I could never reach you. Maurice always blocked it, always found a way to stop me." Leonardo opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were documents, bank statements, signed testimonies, and even photos of Maurice entering the office after hours. The evidence was overwhelming, incontestable. Maurice Albright had destroyed Camila's life to cover up his own theft. "Why didn't you go directly to the police?" he asked, flipping through the papers that definitively proved her innocence. "Because Maurice has contacts, he has influence, and because..." She hesitated, looking at her daughters. "Because I found out I was sick shortly after I got the last pieces of evidence. The medical condition took over my life, and fighting legally became secondary. I just wanted to make sure the girls would be all right." Sophia, who had been quiet during the entire revelation, got up from her chair and went to her mother. "Mommy, is Uncle Leonardo going to help us now?" The simple question cut Leonardo's heart. That 6-year-old child had instinctively understood that something fundamental had changed in the conversation, that the man they had chosen as a father was discovering a truth that could change everything. Leonardo closed the folder and looked at Camila with an intensity that made her recoil in her chair. "You're right. I didn't know the whole story, but now I do." Then he leaned forward, took her hands again, and said with a conviction that surprised even himself, "And that only makes me more certain. Marry me, Camila. Marry me. Let me fix the mistake I made. Let me be the father these girls deserve and the husband you should have had from the beginning." "Leonardo," she began, but he interrupted her softly. "And one more thing. Maurice Albright will pay for everything he did. I'll make sure he's arrested, that your reputation is cleared, that you receive every penny you should have received all these years." He paused, looked at the 3 triplets, who watched as if they were witnessing the most important moment of their lives, and smiled. "But first, I need to know something from my princesses." The 3 immediately approached his chair. "Would you like me to be your real daddy? Not pretend, but really? Forever?" The question came out laden with emotion that made the entire restaurant stop functioning once more. Sophia was the first to respond with a conviction that cut the air like a blade. "We already knew you were our real daddy since you got here," Helena agreed, shaking her head vigorously. "That's why we came to talk to you, because our hearts recognized you." And Isabella concluded with the phrase that would seal all their destinies. "You don't have to pretend anymore, Daddy. We already love you for real." And it was at that moment, with 3 triplets calling him Daddy, with genuine love in their eyes, with Camila crying tears that mixed pain and hope, and with an entire restaurant witnessing the birth of an unlikely family, that Leonardo Ferreira understood that some of the best things in life happen when you least expect them. Now he just had to convince Camila that miracles can happen when you have the courage to believe in them. Camila's answer didn't come in words. It came in the form of soul-cutting sobs, ceaseless tears, and a trembling in her hands that made Leonardo stand up from his chair and kneel beside her. "Camila, look at me," he said softly, holding her face in his hands. "You don't have to carry this weight alone anymore." The 3 triplets watched the scene with a maturity that 6-year-olds shouldn't have. Sophia approached her mother's other side and held her hand. "Mommy, can we be happy now?" Helena joined the 2. "Daddy Leonardo will take care of us when you go to take care of the stars." And Isabella, with that devastating wisdom that characterized her, completed. "He promises he won't leave us alone?" Isabella's question hit Leonardo like lightning. A promise. These children had been abandoned once by their father's death. They were about to be abandoned again by their mother's condition, and now they needed to know if he was different. If he was the kind of man who keeps promises even when things get tough. "Isabella," he said, turning to face the three girls. "Let me explain something very important to you. When a man becomes a real daddy, he makes a promise that lasts forever. No matter what happens, no matter if he's sad or scared or if things get difficult, he never abandons his daughters." Sophia tilted her head. "Like our daddy who went to take care of the stars. He didn't really abandon us?" Leonardo felt his heart tighten, but he kept his voice firm. "Your daddy of the stars didn't choose to leave, but I am choosing to stay forever. Do you understand the difference?" "We understand," the three said in unison, and there was a solemnity in those tiny voices that made the entire restaurant quiet to listen. Camila stopped crying and looked at Leonardo with an expression that mixed admiration and terror. "Leonardo, are you sure about what you're doing? It's not just marrying me. It's taking on 3 children. It's dealing with my medical condition. It's gaining a family." He interrupted her, standing up and extending his hand to her. "Camila Santos Ferreira, do you accept to marry me today, now, in front of these 3 special witnesses?" The official proposal came out laden with an emotion that made even the waiters stop to hear the answer. The silence lasted only a few seconds, but it seemed like an eternity. Camila looked at her daughters, who watched her with a sky-high expectation. Then she looked at Leonardo, who waited with his heart in his hands, and finally spoke the word that would change 5 lives forever: yes. The restaurant erupted in applause. Customers rose from their tables to clap, waiters cheered, and the 3 triplets jumped from their chairs to embrace the 2 adults in a circle of joy that seemed to have come straight out of a movie. "Now we have a real, complete family!" Sophia shouted amidst laughter and tears of happiness. Leonardo grabbed his cell phone with trembling hands and called his lawyer. "David, you need to come to the Doro Palace now. Bring civil marriage documents, adoption papers, and a justice of the peace. Yes, it's urgent. Now." As he spoke, he didn't take his eyes off Camila, who held her daughters as if she still couldn't believe it was happening. "How are you going to get married today?" she asked, still incredulous. "These things take time, bureaucracy." Leonardo smiled, and for the first time in his life, he felt that having money and influence served a truly important purpose. When you have the right contacts and a just cause, mountains move. While they waited for the lawyer to arrive, Leonardo asked for a more private table for the new family. The maitre d' of the Doro Palace, moved by the story he had witnessed, prepared a special table in the restaurant's inner garden, decorated with white flowers that appeared as if by magic. "For the most beautiful ceremony we've ever seen here," he said, discreetly wiping a tear. "Daddy Leonardo," Helena said, as they walked to the new table. "Can I tell you a secret?" He knelt to be at her height. "Of course, princess. Daddies and daughters always share secrets." She leaned close to his ear and whispered, "We prayed a lot for God to send a daddy to take care of Mummy when she gets sick." I think he listened. The revelation hit Leonardo like a punch to the chest. These children had prayed for him. They had specifically asked God for someone to take care of their mother. "How long have you been praying for this?" he asked, his voice choked. Isabella replied, "Since Mommy started crying a lot at night, we knew she was scared." Sophia completed, "That's why, when we saw you alone at the table, we knew it was you. God always sends the right people at the right time." The triplets' words echoed in Leonardo's heart with a force he had never felt before. He wasn't just a rich businessman saving a family in crisis. He was literally the answer to the prayers of 3 desperate children. 40 minutes later, Dr. David Miller arrived at the restaurant accompanied by Justice of the Peace, Anthony Rivers, both carrying folders with documents and an expression of someone who had rushed across the entire city to arrive on time. "Leonardo, are you sure about this?" Dr. Miller asked softly. "It's a very big decision to make so quickly." "I'm more certain about this than any deal I've ever closed in my life," Leonardo replied, holding Camila's hand firmly. "These 4 women are the best investment I've ever made." Camila smiled through her tears upon hearing her daughters called women, treated with the respect and importance they deserved. The ceremony was simple, but perfect. Judge Rivers officiated the vows in the restaurant's garden, with the 3 triplets as impromptu bridesmaids and dozens of customers as emotional witnesses. When it came time for personal vows, Leonardo looked into Camila's eyes and said, "I promise to take care of you and our daughters with all the love that exists in my heart. I promise that you will never again feel alone or abandoned." Camila took a deep breath and spoke with a voice that grew stronger with each word. "I promise to give you all the love I have left, for as long as I have left." and I promise that when I can no longer be here, you will know that I left our daughters with the right man." Her words were like a blessing and a farewell at the same time, making everyone present understand the gravity and beauty of that moment. When the judge said, "You may kiss the bride," the triplets screamed with joy and threw themselves into their parents' embrace, creating a scene that made the restaurant's photographer snap dozens of photos that would become the most precious of their lives. But it was during the signing of the adoption papers that the most emotional moment happened. The judge called the three girls and asked, "Sofia, Helena, and Isabella, do you want Leonardo Ferreira to be your official daddy?" The three responded, "Yes," so loudly that it echoed through the entire restaurant. "And do you promise to be obedient and loving daughters?" he continued. "We promise," they shouted in unison, and then ran to hug Leonardo so tightly that he almost fell out of his chair. "Now we're Ferreiras too," Sofia proudly announced. Sofia Ferreira, Helena Ferreira, and Isabella Ferreira. The sound of their new names echoed through the garden like celestial music. Camila held Leonardo's arm and whispered in his ear, "Thank you for giving them a future. Thank you for letting me leave in peace." Her words were like a blade in his heart, because in that moment of pure happiness, the reality of her medical condition returned like a dark shadow. But before sadness could take over, Isabella approached and said something that changed everything. "Daddy Leonardo, now that we're a real family, Mommy will get better, right? Because families have magical powers to take care of each other." The pure hope in her voice made Leonardo look at Camila with renewed determination. "You know what, Isabella?" he said, picking his daughter up. "You're right. Families have special powers, and we're going to use all those powers to take care of Mommy." He looked at Camila with a sparkle in his eyes she had never seen before. "We're going to fight together. You're not going to give up, and I'm not going to let you give up." And at that moment, surrounded by his new family in the garden of a restaurant that had become the stage for the miracle of their lives, Leonardo Ferreira understood that sometimes love arrives so overwhelmingly that you have no choice but to let yourself be carried away by it. 3 weeks after the ceremony at the restaurant, Leonardo's penthouse had transformed into something completely different. The bachelor apartment, with minimalist furniture and sepulchral silence, now echoed with children's laughter, cartoon music, and the sound of little feet running across the marble corridors. The triplets' bedroom, which Leonardo had built in record time, looked like a princess palace with 3 identical beds, decorated in shades of pink and gold. "Daddy, Mommy doesn't want to get out of bed today," Sofia said, pulling on Leonardo's pajama sleeve as he prepared breakfast. It was Saturday morning, and for the first time in decades, he wasn't thinking about work, just about taking care of the family he had gained. "She said she's very tired." Leonardo felt his stomach tighten. In recent weeks, Camila had had good days and bad days, but lately, the bad days were becoming more frequent. "I'll talk to her, princess. You 3 stay here and finish breakfast." He kissed Sofia's forehead and walked down the hallway to the bedroom he now shared with Camila. She was lying on her side, looking out the window with a distant expression. Even weak, she was still the most beautiful woman Leonardo had ever seen. "Good morning, my wife," he said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "The girls are worried about you, Leonardo," she said, without turning. "I need to talk to you about something very serious." Her tone of voice made his heart race. Camila finally turned to look at him, and there was a determination in her eyes that he hadn't seen in days. "The doctors called last night when you were sleeping. What did they say?" he asked, though he already knew it wouldn't be good news from the way she was speaking. Camila sat up in bed with difficulty and held his hands. "The condition is progressing faster than expected. They said I might only have a few weeks." The world stopped. Leonardo felt as if he had been physically struck in the chest. A few weeks, not months, as they had initially hoped. A few weeks to see his daughters grow, to build memories, to fight for the life they had begun to build together. "No," he said, his voice coming out stronger than he intended. "I won't accept this. We'll find other doctors, other treatments. I have money to take you to the best specialists in the world." Camila smiled with a tenderness that broke his heart. "Leonardo, my love, you can't buy time. I've accepted this. Now you need to accept it too." "Daddy, Mommy!" Helena's voice echoed from the hallway. "Are you fighting?" The 3 triplets appeared at the bedroom door, still in their pajamas, with worried expressions on their little faces. Without hesitation, Leonardo opened his arms, and the 3 ran to snuggle into bed with their parents. "We're not fighting, princess," Camila said, stroking her daughter's golden hair. "We were talking about grown-up things." Isabella snuggled closer to her mother. "Mommy, are you weaker today?" The innocent question filled Camila's eyes with tears. "I'm a little tired, my love, but being here with you gives me all the energy I need." She looked at Leonardo over the girls' heads. "Leonardo, there's something you need to know about Maurice Albright." The name of his former partner made Leonardo frown. In recent weeks, he had been so focused on his family that he had almost forgotten about the company issue. "What about Maurice?" Camila took a deep breath. "He found out we got married, and he found out about the evidence I have against him." "How did he find out?" Leonardo asked, feeling a new concern growing in his chest. "He called me yesterday when you went to pick up the girls from school. He said if I didn't hand over all the documents that prove his innocence, he would destroy our family." Leonardo got out of bed so quickly that he startled the triplets. "He threatened you?" His voice was filled with a rage he didn't know he possessed. Camila shook her head. "Not directly, but he said he has contacts in the justice system, that he can make you lose custody of the girls, that he can prove our marriage was a sham to defraud the adoption system." "That's a lie," Sophia exclaimed, showing she had understood more of the conversation than the adults imagined. "Our marriage is real. Daddy Leonardo loves us for real." Helena and Isabella nodded vigorously in agreement. Leonardo knelt in front of the three girls. "Princesses, Daddy is going to have to resolve some work problems, but I want you to know one thing. No matter what happens, no matter what anyone says, you are my daughters forever. Understood?" The three said yes, in unison, but there was worry in their little eyes. At that moment, the penthouse intercom rang. The doorman announced, "Mr. Leonardo, there's a Maurice Albright downstairs. He says he has an appointment with you." Leonardo and Camila exchanged glances. He hadn't scheduled any meeting. "Send him up," Leonardo said, after a few seconds. Camila looked at him, surprised. "Leonardo?" "No." He held her face in his hands. "My love, it's time to resolve this once and for all. Maurice wants the documents. I'll give him the documents personally." 5 minutes later, Maurice Albright walked into the penthouse as if he owned the place. He was a man in his 50s, expensive suit, slicked back hair, and that fake smile Leonardo could now clearly see through. "Leonardo, good to see you, partner. And this must be the famous widow you snagged." The way Maurice referred to Camila made Leonardo's blood boil. "Watch your words, Maurice. This is my wife, and these are my daughters." The three triplets hid behind their father's legs, instinctively wary of the strange man. "Oh yes, the little orphans you adopted to perform your Good Samaritan act," Maurice said with disdain. "Very touching, but let's get to what matters." He opened the folder he was carrying and spread some documents on the living room table. "I came to collect all the evidence this woman has gathered against me, and I came to warn you that if you don't hand over everything, I'll prove in court that this marriage is a sham." Leonardo looked at the papers and saw falsified documents, invented testimonies, all set up to make it seem like Camila had indeed stolen money from the company. "You really are a master at creating false evidence," he said calmly. "You must have learned a lot doing it the first time." "The first time?" Maurice laughed. "Leonardo, do you really believe this woman's lies? She's a thief, a con artist who's taking advantage of your moment of emotional weakness." He looked at the triplets with contempt, and these children are just props in her little play. That's when Maurice made the fatal mistake, the error that would seal his fate forever. Because at the exact moment he called Leonardo's daughters props in a play, three things happened simultaneously. Sophia started crying. Helena completely hid behind her father, and Isabella looked at Maurice with a rage he didn't know a 6-year-old could feel. And Leonardo Ferreira, who had spent his entire life being a calculating and controlled businessman, finally exploded. "Maurice," Leonardo said, and his voice was so cold that even the triplets stopped crying to look. "You just made the biggest mistake of your miserable life." He approached his former partner with slow, controlled steps, like a predator who had finally found its prey. "You can insult me, you can try to destroy my company, but no one, absolutely no one, messes with my daughters." Maurice laughed, but the sound came out forced, nervous. Something about Leonardo's posture was making him uncomfortable. "Leonardo, you're being dramatic. They're just children you've barely known for a month." He gestured disdainfully toward the triplets. "And this woman here is using you to get a better life before she kicks the bucket." That was the last straw. Leonardo lunged at Maurice with such speed that the man instinctively recoiled, tripping over his own folder and almost falling onto the couch. "Get out of my house," Leonardo growled. "Before I do something we'll both regret." But Maurice, realizing he had lost control of the situation, tried to reclaim his position of power. "I won't leave without the documents, and I won't leave without making it clear that I will destroy this farce of a family you've put together." He pointed at Camila, who was sitting in the armchair, hugging her 3 daughters. "This woman is a criminal, and these children will end up back in the orphanage where they belong. When I prove this is all an act." The word orphanage echoed through the room like a gunshot. The 3 triplets hugged their mother even tighter. Sophia began to sob softly, and Helena whispered fearfully, "Daddy, is he going to take us away?" The innocent question broke Leonardo's heart and ignited a rage he didn't know he possessed. "Maurice," he said, walking to the table where he had left his phone. "You're right about one thing. This conversation is very enlightening." He picked up the device and showed the screen to his former partner, mainly because it's been recorded for the past 15 minutes. Maurice's face lost all color. "What did you say?" Leonardo smiled for the first time since the man had entered his home, but it was a smile without warmth, without humor. It was the smile of someone who had just won a war. "I said you've been recorded. Every word, every threat, every attempt at blackmail, all recorded in high definition." "You can't," Maurice began, but Leonardo interrupted him, raising his hand. "I can, and I already did. But you know what else I can do?" He walked to the bookshelf and pulled out a folder identical to the one Maurice had brought. "I can show you what happens when someone messes with the wrong family." Leonardo opened the folder on the coffee table, right in front of Maurice, and began spreading documents as if he were dealing cards. "I'll explain to you what I've been doing for the past 3 weeks while you thought I was playing house with my new family." The first document he showed made Maurice take a step back. "I hired the country's most expensive investigation firm to track your every move for the past 10 years. The second document made Maurice lean against the wall. "We discovered your secret accounts in the Cayman Islands. Millions of dollars embezzled from the company over 8 years. Not just the 200,000 you planted on Camila's desk." The third document made Maurice's legs weaken. "And we discovered you didn't stop there. Falsified documents, fraudulent contracts, bribery of IRS officials." Camila watched the scene with an expression of growing disbelief. In the 3 weeks since the wedding, Leonardo had mentioned he was taking care of some company matters, but she never imagined the extent of the investigation he had orchestrated. The triplets, despite their young age, perceived that something very important was happening and watched everything in absolute silence. "But my favorite part," Leonardo continued, picking up a sealed envelope, "was discovering that you weren't working alone." He opened the envelope and pulled out high-resolution photos. Richard Sanchez from the legal department, Martha Collins from accounting, Frank Lewis from internal audit, all receiving monthly payments to turn a blind eye to your schemes. Maurice was visibly sweating now. "Leonardo, you don't understand the situation. I can explain." Leonardo raised his hand again. "I'm not finished." He picked up another document, this one with official letterheads. "You know what else I discovered? That you've done this before, at 2 other companies, before becoming my partner. Always the same scheme: gain trust, plant evidence on honest employees, embezzle money, and walk away clean when the chaos erupts." The revelation was like a bomb in the middle of the room. Camila brought her hand to her mouth, realizing she had been just one more victim on a long list. "How many people have you destroyed, Maurice?" she asked, with a voice that mixed pain and indignation. "How many families have you torn apart to line your pockets?" 17 people, Leonardo answered before Maurice could speak. 17 honest employees who were fired for cause, who lost their professional references, who had their lives destroyed to cover up his crimes. He turned to the triplets, who watched with full attention. "Princesses, do you know what justice is?" Sophia was the first to answer. "It's when bad people pay for what they did wrong." Helena completed. "And when good people are freed from blame that isn't theirs." Isabella concluded with the wisdom that always characterized her. "It's when the truth triumphs over lies." "Exactly," Leonardo smiled at his daughters with genuine pride. "And today is the day of justice." He turned to Maurice, who was trapped between the coffee table and the sofa. "Because while you thought you were blackmailing me, I was handing over all this evidence to the FBI, to the IRS, and to the district attorney's office." At that exact moment, as if orchestrated, the penthouse doorbell rang. Leonardo looked at the intercom and smiled. "Ah, and they've arrived." The doorman's voice echoed through the room. "Mr. Leonardo, there's a team from the FBI downstairs. They say they have an arrest warrant for a certain Maurice Albright." The silence that followed was deafening. Maurice looked at Leonardo with an expression that mixed terror, disbelief, and pure hatred. You planned all this?" Leonardo nodded calmly. "From day one, you thought I would let what you did to my wife slide? You thought you could come into my house, threaten my daughters, and get away with it?" "Leonardo, we can talk," We can reach an agreement, Maurice began to plead, all his previous arrogance disappearing instantly. I'll give the money back. I'll apologize to Camila. We'll forget this whole story. Leonardo shook his head. Too late. You had 10 years to do the right thing. You chose to destroy families. The doorbell rang again, more insistent. Daddy, Sophia said softly. The policemen are going to take the bad man away. Leonardo knelt in front of the three girls. They are, Princess. And he'll never be able to hurt our family or any other family again, Helena asked. And Mommy won't be called a thief anymore? Never again, Camila responded, getting up from the armchair with difficulty, but with renewed dignity in her eyes. Thanks to your daddy, everyone will know I was always innocent. Isabella ran to hug Leonardo's legs. Daddy is a real hero. Send them up, Leonardo said into the intercom. Then he turned to Maurice one last time. Oh, and one more thing. All the employees you destroyed over the years will receive full compensation from the company and their jobs back, if they want them, starting with my wife, who will take over as CFO as soon as she feels better. The heavy footsteps of the police echoed down the hallway, approaching the penthouse door. Maurice made one last desperate move, trying to grab the documents on the table. But Leonardo was faster. You won't need them. They're just copies. The originals have been with the authorities for a week. When the FBI entered the penthouse, they found Maurice Albright, completely defeated, sitting on the sofa with his head in his hands. Maurice Albright, the agent announced. You are under arrest for racketeering, embezzlement, identity fraud, and fraud against public administration. Handcuffs were placed on the wrists of the man who had destroyed so many lives. As Maurice was led away, he looked at Leonardo one last time. You may have destroyed me, but your wife will still die, and these children will be left without a mother. The cruel words were the last low blow from a defeated man, but this time they did not have the desired effect. Because Camila stood up, walked to where Maurice was being escorted, and said in a voice that came out stronger than it had in months, Maurice, you're right about one thing. I may not have much time left to live, but I have enough time to see you rot in jail, and I have enough time to see my daughters grow up knowing that justice always wins. When the door closed and Maurice Albright disappeared from their lives forever, the family gathered in the middle of the living room in a collective hug that lasted long minutes. Sophia, Helena, and Isabella hugged their parents with a strength that seemed to want to make that moment eternal. Daddy, Sophia said in the middle of the hug, now that the bad man is gone, Mommy will get better? The innocent question made Leonardo and Camila exchange glances over the girls' heads. It was the question neither of them wanted to face, but which they could no longer avoid. Princesses, Camila said, pulling away slightly to look at her three daughters. Come sit here with me. We have something very important to talk about. And at that moment, with justice finally served and the villain defeated, the Ferreira family prepared to face the most important battle of their lives together. The battle for Camila's life. And for the first time in months, she didn't feel alone in this fight. 2 years later, the Saturday morning sun streamed through the penthouse windows, illuminating a scene that seemed to have come from a dream. Sophia, Helena, and Isabella, now 8 years old, were sitting on the living room floor, playing with dolls, their laughter echoing through the corridors that 2 years ago were silent and cold. Leonardo watched from the kitchen, preparing breakfast with a smile on his face that hadn't disappeared in months. Daddy, Sophia shouted from the living room. Is Mommy awake yet? Before he could answer, a familiar voice echoed from the hallway. I'm awake, yes, my princess. Camila appeared in the living room, wearing a blue silk robe, her hair loose on her shoulders, and, most importantly of all, with a rosy color in her cheeks that hadn't been there 2 years ago. The miracle had happened gradually, almost imperceptibly at first. 3 months after Maurice's arrest, Camila had woken up one day feeling different, stronger, more energetic. The doctors, initially skeptical, began to notice improvements in her tests that they couldn't scientifically explain. Sometimes, Dr. Martinez had said during a consultation, the human body reacts in ways that medicine still doesn't fully understand. Emotional factors, reduced stress, a sense of purpose, all of this can influence the recovery process. Camila had looked at Leonardo at that moment and whispered, It's the power of families that Isabella talked about. Good morning, beautiful family, Leonardo said, emerging from the kitchen with a tray laden with pancakes, fruit, and natural juices. Special breakfast for the special day. The triplets exchanged mischievous smiles, which always preceded a surprise. What special day, Daddy? Helena asked, feigning innocence. Leonardo chuckled, placing the tray on the table. Do you think I forgot that today marks exactly 2 years since 3 princesses appeared at my table at the Douro Palace, whispering the words that changed everything? Isabella jumped from her play and ran to hug her father. You remember everything? I remember every detail, he said, stroking his daughter's golden hair. I remember how you were trembling with fear. I remember Mommy's red dress. I remember how my heart raced when you asked me to pretend to be your daddy. He looked at Camila with that love that only grew stronger every day. And I remember how I discovered I wasn't pretending. Camila approached and kissed her husband's forehead. And I remember how you saved 5 lives that day. Mine and the girls, and yours too. Leonardo frowned. 5? Sophia ran to join the family hug. Daddy, didn't you notice? Mommy has a little belly. The world stopped. Leonardo looked at Camila, who smiled with that expression of someone holding the world's best secret. Camila, are you? She felt her eyes well up with happy tears. 3 months. The doctor said it's a miracle, that theoretically it would be impossible. But, Helena completed the sentence. But families have magical powers. Leonardo fell to his knees right there in the living room, hugging his wife and his 3 daughters all at once, crying tears of a happiness he didn't know existed. A baby. We're having a baby, Isabella, always the wisest, said with adorable seriousness. Daddy, now there are 6 of us. An even more complete family. And you know what else? Camila said, wiping tears from her husband's face. The doctors did all possible tests. The medical condition I had has completely disappeared. They can't explain it, but there's no longer any trace of the illness in my system. Leonardo kissed her with an intensity that made the triplets scream, "Ew!" in unison, but then burst into laughter. The phone rang at that moment, interrupting the family celebration. Leonardo answered, and Dr. Miller's animated voice echoed through the room. Leonardo, did you see the newspaper today? Maurice's sentence came out. Everyone fell silent, waiting for the news. 22 years in federal prison. He'll pay back every last cent, and 17 more people had their names cleared. Justice served, Leonardo said, looking at the family gathered around him. Finally, Camila held his hand. You know what that means? It means our story ends exactly as it should end, with truth winning, with love triumphing, and with a whole family ahead of us. Daddy, Sophia said, tugging on his shirt sleeve. Can we go back to the restaurant today to celebrate our family anniversary? Helena clapped her hands. Yes, let's show everyone how happy we are, Isabella completed. And let's give thanks for everything that happened that afternoon. At the Douro Palace, the table was the same. The inner garden was decorated just like on their wedding day, but this time for pure celebration. The maître d', who had witnessed the entire story from the beginning, greeted the family with tears in his eyes. What a joy to see you all here, complete and happy. As they waited for their order to arrive, Leonardo looked around and saw familiar faces. Customers who had witnessed that first encounter 2 years ago, waiters who had attended the wedding, people who had somehow been touched by their story. Daddy, Sophia said, climbing onto her chair to be taller. Can I say something to everyone? Leonardo nodded, curious. Sophia turned to the restaurant and said loud enough for everyone to hear. Folks, 2 years ago, Helena, Isabella, and I came here very scared and asked a man to pretend he was our daddy. The entire restaurant stopped to listen, recognizing the girl from the story that had become a local legend. Helena also stood up. We didn't know he wouldn't need to pretend because he was already our daddy at heart. Isabella concluded with that wisdom that always characterized her. And today, we want to tell everyone, if you find someone who needs a family, open your heart, because the best families are the ones we choose. The restaurant erupted in applause. People rose from their tables, waiters clapped, and the sound echoed through the walls like a celebration of life. Leonardo and Camila exchanged glances, knowing they were raising daughters who would change the world with such generous hearts. To conclude, Leonardo said, raising his glass of juice, I want to make a toast to the 3 princesses who taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about love. To the woman who showed me that miracles happen when you open your heart. And to the baby who's coming, who will be born into the most loving family in the world. Everyone raised their glasses. And Camila said, her voice choked. And to everyone listening to us, never give up on love, never give up on hope, because sometimes, when you least expect it, 3 children approach your table and whisper the words that will change your life forever. When the afternoon ended and they returned home, Leonardo paused at the entrance to the penthouse and looked back. There was his family, Camila, pregnant and radiant, Sophia playing with dolls, Helena singing a song, Isabella reading a book. Everything he had always dreamed of, without knowing he was dreaming. "Thank you," he whispered, looking up at the sky. "Thank you for sending me 3 angels to teach me what truly matters in life." And that night, as he tucked the triplets into bed, Sophia held his hand and said the phrase he would carry in his heart forever. "Daddy, you saved us that day at the restaurant, but we also saved you. Didn't we?" Leonardo smiled, kissed his daughter's forehead, and whispered the purest truth he had ever spoken in his life. "You did, my princess. You saved Daddy and made him understand that family is the greatest treasure anyone can have."